And we are the Non-Prophets. As I address this august audience, I am touched at how Kevin Stein, Jamie Boone, and Matt Dillahunty set aside their differences and come to you together as one live from the Austin Free Thought Library on this, the 6th of February, 2019. These efforts are sponsored not by our fears and our hatred, but by the Atheist Community of Austin, whose founding fathers would be proud to see their nonprofit educational organization for the promotion of positive atheism and the separation of church and state has grown into a shining beacon of truth and justice. Its founding documents, available to all citizens who call the voicemail at 512-220-6561 or visit the website at www.atheist-community.org. Only through the strength of our unity and the sweat of our brow does this show broadcast live every first and third Wednesday of each month from 7:30 to 9 Central Time. And to assure our voices are raised as one, every citizen must follow the directions at www.nonprofitsradio.com and join the chat room. For it is only through the solidarity of our wills and the sober reflection of our reason that we shall prevail.
Wow, for a second there, I thought you were going to go on for whatever it was, an hour and 17 minutes. And I was like, well, it's going to make the show a lot shorter.
Yeah, well, I could fill it, man.
Oh, don't. No, we've got things to talk about. Well, welcome to all of those of you watching at home or from another place. We have with us as a special guest non-prophet, the decidedly non-prophet, Matt Dillahunty. Matt.
Indeed.
How you been?
Oh, crap. You asked me a question. I was going to see how long I could go without talking.
Well, this one doesn't count. You'll see how long you can go without interjecting.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see how long you can go without a Bible quote.
That's it. It's a joke from before the show. He was saying he was going to try and go the whole episode without talking, so I decided to break that real fast.
To answer your question, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Glad to hear it. Well, I think we can get right into stories. I think you have the first one for us, Kevin.
Yeah, I suppose so. We could go ahead and do that. Let's see. This is... Brazil accuses U.S. missionary of putting isolated tribes' lives at risk. And this is not the guy from a couple of weeks ago. That was John Allen Choi. I can't remember. Yeah, it's not him. It's a new guy.
Is this guy dead too?
No, he got arrested. So Brazil's Indigenous Affairs Department, FUNAI, has accused an American missionary of exposing an isolated indigenous tribe to disease and possibly death. Steve Campbell, a Christian missionary, entered the area occupied by the tribe last month. I'm not even going to try. Yeah. One of the few dozen tribes in Brazil that has no contact with the outside world.
Is it bad that, to me, the funniest and most unique part of this story is that the portion of the Brazil's government for the protection of like indigenous species is FUNAI, which is like funny, as if the affairs of all right.
Indigenous Affairs Department.
Indigenous Affairs Department. Isn't that funny? No. All right.
No.
All right.
That's cool.
Anyways, so
tell me about the genocide.
Basically, he was there evangelizing to some other tribes that already had contact with Westerners, but he says that he got lost when he was using his GPS and he accidentally stumbled on this isolated tribe. That's what he's claiming. Is he was just a happy coincidence, and he's not at fault.
And
I don't know about that.
And while lost in the Brazilian rainforest, he found new people, and instead of asking them for directions, decided to preach the word of God to them.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know about this guy. I really don't buy his claim that it was an accident. And he's a full-grown adult. He has kids. He doesn't have the excuse that John Allen had of, being a very young man that was heavily indoctrinated and, wide-eyed.
Right.
kind of
Well, he's an old man.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
indoctrinated.
He really should have known better than to be putting these people at risk. I feel like he has less excuse.
I think that what we need is some sort of intro where I am the devil's advocate.
Yeah, bring it on.
Because I don't know what his motivations were. I can't read his mind. I don't know if he accidentally stumbled on him or whatever. But if there's a tribe of indigenous people that have no contact with the outside world, you'd think somebody would put up some signs or something. Because if the goal is to protect them from, a Trail of Tears type incident, then I would say the Brazilian government and perhaps that tribe and some others have some responsibility. So I don't know where there are signs saying, turn back, you're going to kill everybody.
That's fair. I do have some bad news though in terms of FUNAI, I think.
Funny.
Those of you who aren't aware, the new Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro.
Yeah, he's the real threat.
He gained a lot of support from the evangelical, and it was basically his anti-abortion stance, and he's very anti-indigenous tribes people as well.
Yeah,
and he appointed. Let's see, I've actually got a quote from him. He said, "There is no indigenous territory where there aren't minerals, gold, tin, and magnesium in these lands, especially in the Amazon, the richest area in the world. I'm not getting into this nonsense of defending land for Indians."
Is that so? Presumably, that's translated out of Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Yeah.
Portuguese. Is the word the word translated into Indians?
I don't know. There was indigenous before, so I don't know what.
This is from The Guardian.
There's
also a Facebook thing said, "It's a shame the Brazilian cavalry wasn't as efficient as the Americans who exterminated the Indians."
Jesus.
Wow.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack there. Not just the fact that there are still Native Americans or their descendants. So, never mind. That's not what the word exterminated means, which is the most pedantic thing to object to in that heinous statement.
I just think, we're focus on the jackass's clear bigotry.
Oh, yeah.
I don't give a crap about these people, so let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
No matter where the responsibility rests, he has to own some of that responsibility as their current president.
Well, he openly carries the label of the Trump of
Brazil.
Yeah, the Trump of Brazil.
He's like, yes, I am.
He's absolutely
Then he should build a
terrible.
wall around that indigenous community.
And what's extremely worrisome is he's in charge of the lungs of the planet.
Yeah.
And actually, the FUNAI, he actually appointed an evangelical preacher and congressional aide who also co-founded Atini, a controversial group that evangelizes to indigenous communities and is subject to an investigation currently by public prosecutors for inciting racial hatred against indigenous peoples.
What?
So I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction and say that either nothing happens to this guy legally or he's going to get a pardon.
Yeah,
I don't think there's going to be any consequences for this
I don't know
guy.
how pardons work. I actually, for the most part, don't know how the Brazilian government works.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if they do pardons.
Possibly. Because
Let me just arrest the family members of everybody who disagrees with me, and then there's no reason for a pardon.
There you
All
go.
right.
I don't know whether that's a specific reference to a specific thing or just to strongman tactics in general.
Yeah.
Okay. See, it's not fun when you make a joke and then other people just sort of stare at you and analyze it. It's not as funny.
Well, Jane, you had an opinion about.
Yeah, no. So I tend to think a little bit differently about, because a lot of the people that I know that we know sort of default to, here's an indigenous population, they have this land, leave them alone, right? We should definitely, if someone else has land, you shouldn't take it from them, right?
Right.
But there seems to be this underlying value placed on no, preserve this ancient culture and ancient way of life by having people live it. And in general, right, if there's a foreign nation that refuses aid, we don't force them to take things. However, that doesn't mean we don't offer it, right? And if there were people who were subject to, again, I don't know how well off the indigenous peoples of Brazil are, but
Under Bolsonaro, they're not doing well.
well, there's that. But I mean, as far as comparing the lifestyles of, I don't know this specific example, but I've run into this idea of like, no, there's something pure and beautiful about ancient ways of life that I wholeheartedly disagree with.
Yeah, I could view it as easily being a version of a naturalistic fallacy. I think the thing that people are trying to value is the individual and liberty and freedom of those groups, and let's not run right over them. I think I'm in the same boat as you, and I was thinking about saying something kind of similar or along those lines, which is one of the reasons why I went straight to devil's advocate and arguing that the government and that tribe bear some responsibility because it's the 21st century, and if there's a group of people who are completely isolated from everybody else, it's sort of incumbent upon them to make that clear. That don't cross this line. And hey, if they want to shoot anybody who crosses the line after they put up signs, then I guess
Yeah,
That was a lot more crystal clear with John Allen Chow because he actually had to go out to that island.
Yeah.
And they were very, very secluded.
he had to bribe people to break the law to get him there.
Right.
He knew what he was doing. Yeah, whether this person knew what he was doing or not, I definitely agree with that. But the degree to which you're required to put up a billboard versus put up a fence versus just
If you're in the
make
heart of the
it
Amazon
broadly
forest,
make it
it's
broadly known
pretty difficult.
because there's only so many ways to get to the Amazon forest without
There's another aspect to this too, which is
Yeah.
okay. So this group is cut off from the rest of society, presumably voluntarily.
Yeah.
Or have people left that tribe and gone out and?
I couldn't say.
I don't know. So here's my problem with this is right now there are children being born isolated from modern society.
Yes.
And they're not being afforded the and many of them are not being afforded the opportunity to be free.
Yes.
Right?
You can have an isolated community in the United States, but you still need to vaccinate your kids, and you still need to follow the laws of the United States and have religious freedom.
Yeah.
And general freedom.
Yeah.
Oh, there was actually a separate part of the article that I didn't go ahead and underline because I wasn't sure if it was going to come up, but a while back ago, fairly recently, there was a provision that allowed indigenous tribes to opt out or opt into staying isolated. Not sure how you really do that if they're
That's the
if
thing.
they're
Is that,
isolated. Bolsonaro got rid of that, so they can no longer opt to stay isolated.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then there may not be, because he changed what the law is, there may not even be a potential crime here.
Well, I think
I mean, there's still a big problem.
Yeah, well, they're wanting to
may be
take him
that
up
he-
on charges of potential genocide because of exposing them to pathogens.
to pathogens, yeah. So it's then becomes an issue of public health, right? So I would say to that, it kind of sounds like he removed the part of the law that would allow the indigenous tribe to choose whether or not they were contacted by the rest of the country, which to me sounds like, well, it's not your choice. I haven't changed what the outcome is yet.
Yeah.
So it still may be.
And once again, we're commenting about what Brazilians' laws are when we don't know versus what they should be when we don't know.
And here's special guest, Brazilian lawyer. I don't know. It's interesting because the similar things, I think, happen because there's a lot of cultural divides and cultural isolation that happens for reasons that gets justified by culture or that occurs because of someone's religion, right? Like you can say you can have an isolated group in the United States, but you still have to vaccinate your children, you have to do all these things, et cetera.
Yeah, there's a limit to how isolated you can be. And
Yeah.
I think there's generally good reasons for that. And one of the things is that, when you live outside the law, you don't have the protections of it. And
Right.
So, now I've got my little enclave of indigenous people, and we're living our life, and we're doing our own thing, but we are surrounded by and essentially part of a country that we're either not participating with or contributing to. And I'm fine with that in a limited freedom. I mean, because I don't think the isolation can actually maintain. You know, at some point, you're going to come in contact with somebody, and then something like this is going to happen. So what there needs to be is better policies in place
to prevent this?
To either prevent this from happening or to address, you know, yes, you can have your group out here and people aren't allowed to trespass on your property or whatever else, but you live in a modern world where there's, you know, vaccines and diseases you haven't been exposed to, and we cannot possibly be expected to protect people from everything they're going to come in contact with, and you have essentially chosen to live outside of those protections. I'm not...
Well, so that's another thing I was saying is, are you saying that a group of an isolated sort of community, a relatively isolated community that, you know, it's a one dirt road town that's, you know, I won't say Amish because I don't want to, but something like that, a minority, a small religious community. They choose not to engage in the rest of society. We only know they're there because every now and then, you know, a drunk college kid stumbles down the road, and when he does that, a group of people from this village carts him back on a horse and buggy.
And M. Night Shyamalan makes a movie.
And M. Night Shyamalan makes a movie about them. Spoiler, but it doesn't matter because that was... I was about to say one of his not good movies, but
keep going
with your point. The point was, do you think that at that point they can opt out of public education or vaccinating their children?
My take on this, my reflexive thought is no, that we have much the same way that we have a civic duty and responsibility to all of the citizens of the United States. That would include indigenous peoples living on reservations and other things like that. And there has to be some shared parity of responsibility. You know, you can remove yourself from culture to some extent, but maybe not wholly. I don't know what the right answer is, and I'm certainly not making excuses for what happened in this incident, other than I don't know that I can just blame random missionary. If it's at least plausible that he accidentally stumbled upon this, which I don't know how likely that is. But if that's even in the realm of plausibility, then other steps need to be taken by somebody other than him. Because now somebody's going to go out there on purpose.
Well, especially now that there likely is not going to be any legal consequences.
Right.
Especially.
And if the government is hostile to all of this, and so now we have this thing where we're not only not protecting the freedoms that we should, but we're essentially taking away some of the freedoms that we should not take away. And no matter how involved you think somebody else should be in society, I think those laws generally come down to where there's overlap. Like we vaccinate for herd immunity. We have responsibilities to one another to the extent that our lives overlap. But, you know, I get to watch whatever show I want to watch in my house, and I don't have to leave my house as long as I keep, you know, paying all my bills and don't get evicted. And I don't have to let anybody in my house.
Yeah.
But I still have duties and responsibilities to the society that I'm a part of. I don't know how that works once you have an indigenous group that's untouched by outsiders. I don't know.
Can there be cultural genocide? I mean, where you kill the culture of a group? I mean, we tried to do that with the Native Americans by educating their children in, you know.
European settlers tried to do that.
I'm pretty sure Richard Spencer would say yes.
I wasn't going to point out that that's a phrase that white supremacists use as well, but...
See, I think it can happen, and this will probably be the minority view. I don't give a rat's ass if cultures die out. I don't have this...
How is it that we agree on so much and haven't spoken about it? Because cultures are less important than the lives of the peoples in them, and if they have to leave all of their culture behind, but all of them survive, it's better than half of them dying and their culture remaining?
Yeah, it's because you're my son.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, but I've had this, you know, I have people who are close to me who really care a lot about their heritage and their history and what led up to that. I'm forward-looking. Yeah. I had ancestors who helped start the Southern Baptist Convention. They were French Huguenots escaping religious persecution, coming over here doing all this. It's an interesting thing, but it has no impact on my life, and it's not something that I care about preserving. But what I also recognize is that the people who care about preserving those things have to be permitted to do it. I'm not going to come in and intentionally trample it. But personally, I don't care if this traditional part of any culture vanishes for the same reason that I don't care that blacksmiths are getting unemployed. You know, they're no longer having to shoe horses all the time. It's called progress, and I generally view it as a positive.
Well, so what I will say to that is I don't want anything to disappear from history just for pragmatic reasons, right? So when a language dies, right, I think that can be bad because then our knowledge of languages is diminished. However, if fewer people speak a language or a language isn't used anywhere else, then that's sort of like, whatever. Like, I'm not worried about Latin going away because the Catholic Church will keep it alive forever.
In Dominus Patris.
The caveat I have for these isolated cultures and things is that if they exist in a larger modern civilization, somehow it has to be guaranteed that every member of that isolated community has the option, if they so desire, to leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
No, just why with the Rumspringa with the Amish, I'm like, you know what? You're doing this correctly.
There are exceptions, and actually, I can't give too much in the way of details, but there are a number of small towns in the United States that are essentially run by religious denominations and organizations. And I'm hoping to explore those for a project because I think there's a concern about whether or not somebody's civil rights are being violated.
They are.
Americans. And if you have a town rule that men have to walk down one side of the street and women have to walk down a different side of the street, and if somebody who's not part of your religious community moves in and all of a sudden they find it very difficult to get their water and their power turned on because, you know, you're essentially trying to run out all the people who don't fit in with your little thing, I would agree that individual communities get to make their own rules, but within limits. The Constitution still applies and our duty to each other still applies.
Yeah, I mean, where do you draw the line if they're raising their children by lying to them about the outside world?
Yes.
They can't make an educated decision on whether they want to stay or go. So you've abrogated their rights at that point. You've removed their ability to choose.
Yeah, it essentially
you've imprisoned them.
It's no longer an informed choice. It reminds me in many other ways where we would talk about things like incest comes up from time to time when people are wanting to do the moral thing, and I'm like, if two properly informed adults who happen to be related by blood want to have sex, that's their business. But if you have to deal with the situation where somebody has been isolated and groomed for that position, and that's fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Who knew indigenous affairs were this complicated?
People that had looked into them. Yeah. What's interesting for me is I realized the other day when I was talking to someone that when it comes to any kinds of conflicts that play into this, I definitely value international law over historical context and narrative and all of these things, right? So for me, the main issues between the United States doing things on indigenous lands is, the United States signed various treaties with the native peoples. What are the terms of those treaties? And that doesn't get covered in the news today.
Yeah, the other thing is, you know, there needs to be a separate consideration of whether or not the terms of those treaties were in fact fair, not just the fact that you managed to get somebody to agree with it, because that's how con artists work, you know.
Yeah, sign this treaty.
Right.
There's a context here.
Or, you know, buy this car at my used car lot at 19.5% interest. You know, if you have no other options, people are essentially, for practical reasons, forced into making decisions that they wouldn't otherwise. And I think that we have some responsibility to make sure that the contract, because I'm not a fucking libertarian.
Right.
I don't think that just because you can get somebody to sign a contract, you win.
Or follow my commandments, or you go straight to hell forever.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Gun to your head.
It's a nice soul you got there.
Yeah.
All right.
shame.
We've
All
gotten a
right.
little bit off track, so I'm going to
And for our next
reel
story,
us back in.
what do we got?
Yeah.
This is from Fox News.
Oh,
Dun dun dun.
Teen charged in death of 17-year-old.
17-year-old?
Oh,
boy.
right. Yes.
Yeah,
7-year-old.
7-year-old. Jesus.
yeah, yeah.
What the hell's wrong with
Hang on.
me?
We don't care about 17-year-olds.
No.
Yeah.
No, 7-year-olds is where we draw the line.
Yeah, it's the
right.
it's the age of reason. Come on.
Okay, so Damien, I'm just going to say Harschultz, is charged with first-degree reckless homicide and 6
The
other
murdering
charges.
of a nun.
Although he is only 15, Wisconsin juveniles charged with certain homicide counts are handled in American
Handled in adult court.
court. I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic today.
Yeah.
Damien's father, Timothy, who is 48, is charged with felony murder and 5 other charges, and his mother, Tina, who's 35, is charged with failing to prevent bodily harm and intentionally contributing to the delinquency of a minor. So basically what happened was
Sounds like a real mess.
Man.
this 17-year-old was being punished.
7-year-old.
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 Was being punished for not memorizing enough Bible verses to, his father Timothy's satisfaction. So the father left and put the older brother, who was 15, in charge of carrying out the punishment. And he had to carry a 44-pound log, which was about 2/3 of his body weight,
Right.
around in the snow while Damien hit and kicked him with all kinds of different implements like sticks, and eventually he rolled the log on top of the kid on his chest and pinned him down in with his face in the snow. And the kid ended up dying. And
Yeah, it sounds. Sounds like that was the.
Okay, I'm not going to do devil's advocate for every session.
I was going to say, so
There's
Matt,
no advocate
you're
for this.
designated.
Kid should have learned his Bible verses.
If this lazy child had studied harder in school,
Yeah, this is one of those things where there's just tons and tons of blame to go around.
Yeah.
I have to put the majority of it on the 15-year-old.
yeah.
But I understand why the parents were charged as well. Because how do you get a 15-year-old put them
To
in
do
charge
that.
of punishing a 7-year-old, and yet they don't know? Well, first of all, the punishment itself is
Inhumane.
beyond the bounds of reasonableness and humanity. But to not know that there should still be a limit even on that. Because I think when I read the story, wasn't it stood on the chest? With
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
horrible.
Yeah, he stood on his chest and he rolled the log on top of him, and he had his face down in the snow.
It all contributed. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said that he hit the kid about 100 times. That's what Damien said. He approximated that he hit and kicked him about 100 times. I mean, I can't say I'm terribly surprised that a dad who would dole out this kind of punishment
Wasn't paying attention.
it wasn't paying attention, and also created the kind of kid that would do this.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Man.
I'm pretty sure that is
Bad.
nurture more than nature.
I wonder if this is
Yeah.
I wonder how isolated this group
Yeah.
is too, because it may tie into the others on the isolated front, because I don't have to remember a single Bible verse ever and can have instant access to almost all of them, if not all of them. So apart from, if you want to teach your kid anything, but let's go with, religious stuff, memorizing Bible verses is far less important than understanding them in the first place. So the fact that you didn't memorize something that you could easily look up, it's this is old school pre-Common Core, let's teach for the test type of thing before Common Core.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
learn-
My response was this is not. It doesn't surprise me that there is someone forcing their children to memorize Bible verses.
Yeah, I recall a lot of history tests where the date of what happened was more important than what happened. You know?
Yeah, but no, just
Something
even
happened in
make any sense.
1492.
Yeah.
Yeah, this you probably wouldn't be able to get away with this in suburbia,
depends on the suburb.
I guess.
It's going to say if
It has
the
to be-
entire
it has to
suburb
be pretty
is
rural.
I do like the fact that
have
almost
this
everybody
happen.
got charged, though,
Yeah.
and that we heard about it.
I do like that we heard about it. It's one of those things. I don't get depressed now when I hear the horrifying stories about religious things because I know that these things didn't just start happening, but I know that I'm hearing about it and I'm hearing about it more.
Who do we
And that
think is
means that
more to
other
blame?
people? Who do we think is more to blame?
The father was gone, but he outlined what the punishment was going to be. The mother, it does not mention that the mother was gone.
Right.
So she
So I have questions
kind
about the
of-
father
so
being.
she let it happen.
Yeah, so I have questions about the father being gone, meaning like he was out of the house that
Yeah.
day.
He wasn't there. He
Like he went to buy a pack of cigarettes and they hadn't
I
seen
think he was at work.
at work. Okay,
and so he had Damien dole out the punishment, and the mother, it does not mention that she was gone, so I have to assume that she was there.
Like it got out of
Yeah.
hand.
I don't mean to be that guy, but there's no way this is the first time that the 7-year-old was asked to memorize Bible verses. There's no way that Damien himself wasn't forced to memorize Bible verses. And there's no way that Damien was forced to memorize Bible verses, never got one wrong, and was punished with a wrist slap, and then decided to punish his younger brother like this. So I would say the parents, possibly more so the father, if just extrapolating from fundamentalist views of Christianity and the family ideas that they create, I hold the father most accountable, mostly.
I actually hold the
He is the
15-year-old most
adult.
accountable. I recognize that, of course, the parents undeniably contributed to this and set up this situation, and this 15-year-old is the result of everything that his parents did to him in the first place. But you can play that, the grandfather was responsible for what the father did, which is what was responsible at 15 years old. And I'm not saying that it's all to blame, but there are certain things that everybody knows or figures out. And what sort of force? First of all, any I'm opposed to spanking kids or any punishment that actually does physical damage at all anyway, but I recognize that they're not. But at 15 years old, I definitely knew how much harm was too much harm to be a risk. So
What about charging him as an adult?
I'm actually,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I'm generally opposed to charging minors as adults. I think there was a reason we made the distinction. And apart from the fact that I'm just generally opposed to it, I also think that if the parents put him in that position of authority, he was granted the responsibility of adult and was expected to act on it. And that's where the parents' responsibility comes in. It's not like we were going to charge parents as children. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
The adult in the room deliberately wasn't there. And it's like, I don't know.
I don't know. Do you think that he would?
It's monumentally lazy. I don't care if you're at work. I don't care if you went out for a pack of smokes or whatever else. Hey, your little brother needs to be punished. Why don't you take care of that for me while I go do something else? No. If your kid needs to be punished, which that's a whole separate conversation, then it's the parents that are the custodians and the caretakers for that child and not the other sibling.
So actually, I then need to ask this question. My understanding, because I didn't read into this independently, was the 15-year-old charged with testing him on the Bible verses and then carrying out the punishment if necessary, or was it
Just the punishment.
just the
And
punishment?
it was actually 13 Bible verses that he was supposed to have memorized.
So it was, he's failed
Not
to
that
recite these
matters.
to me satisfactorily. He needs to get punished, but I'm off to work.
More or less.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was work necessarily, but he left.
Yeah, that's the thing Jamie's asking is, I don't know enough about the scenario. Was it teach your brother these Bible verses, and if he doesn't get them right, you know what to do. Or your brother failed to memorize his Bible verses, and while I'm gone, I need you to punish him.
Yeah.
I don't know how much difference it makes, because in the end, we have a 7-year-old who is dead because of just some backward-ass thinking that is brutal and callous and irresponsible across the board.
Yep.
And with this kind of punishment being a regular thing, or at least a thing that has been done before, which they do go over, you got to wonder if that which verse is it about how you can
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one was probably in there. He probably got that one.
I bet that was tattooed on somebody's ass.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's withhold not punishment from a child, otherwise you hate them, so hit them with a stick. I'm paraphrasing.
I'm sure he knew that.
Because I think that phrase isn't actually in the Bible specifically. Yeah, but yeah.
Yep.
That's all right, because the Bible wasn't written in English anyway.
Yeah, so nothing that I've ever said was actually in the Bible, because I don't speak
More you know.
Aramaic, whatever it was. Depends on which part.
Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
any final thoughts on that one, Dennis?
No, not really.
Yeah. Dennis was done with that story a long time ago.
It's great that religion is harmless. Yeah. God.
I will say that while I do hold that 15-year-old most responsible because he was directly responsible.
I mean, he's directly responsible, yeah.
But that's the thing, is that the parents don't own children. They are stewards of the children, and the state can and should, I think, step in and take them away when parents are this negligent.
Do this, yeah.
So I hope that 15-year-old finds a home that will love him and teach him how to not do stuff like this, assuming that that home is not the state penitentiary.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
I don't know any way to
Sounds
avoid
like
it.
it's going to be, yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about the wife's charge. The 30,
What was she charged with?
I don't know what contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
failing to prevent bodily harm and intentionally contributing to the delinquency of a child.
Yeah, so basically they got her for neglect, and I don't know what the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely guilty of that, but she...
Was the father not charged with anything?
No, he was. He was charged
Yeah, we need
with
I need
Murder.
a lot more.
felony murder.
Felony murder is like...
And 5 other
You know, if
charges.
you're driving the getaway car, essentially, you're still guilty of what happens.
Yeah.
And it's a weird charge that I'm fine with in this circumstance, but I'm not sure if I'm fine with elsewhere. But it's... And of course, this makes it on the show because it's tied to religious ideas. And, you know, hey, we need to memorize Bible verses. What I'd like most to see, irrespective of whatever the final outcome is for all the people who are charged, is instead of having this picked up by a newspaper and having the nonprofits comment on it, I would like for every self-identified Christian preacher in the United States to denounce this.
That'd be great.
As both... Your kid does not need to be punished for not memorizing Bible verses, let alone physically punished to the point of death. How fucking hard is that? You know?
And please, if you can, find an example of an atheist family doing this.
Yeah.
You didn't memorize enough Dawkins quotes, so...
You hear Christians, and especially pundits, will say all the time that people within the Islamic community need to be very vocal about denouncing every single bad thing that happens under the umbrella of Islam.
Yep.
And yet they don't do that.
Yeah, they're not going to denounce. Occasionally, you might get one of them to denounce Westboro just because it's a good PR thing.
That's a low bar.
And what I found from many of them is when I ask, well, why aren't you speaking out about this? Their thought is, for some of the ones I've spoken with, well, of course I'm against it. Everybody's against it. They just, and it's not enough for it to be a matter of course that everyone's opposed to it. Sometimes you have to say something, especially when something is being, is representing ideas and mindsets within what you believe.
Yeah, otherwise we will be forced to draw conclusions.
Well, all you pastors who think that, of course you object to it, are you opposed to corporal punishment? That's the first question, because
Usually not.
If you're not, then there's a real conflict there that you have a duty
Yeah.
to address.
I think they would probably say, to play pastor's advocate here,
Okay.
Yeah.
they would probably say, well, I'm not opposed to spanking your child, but you definitely shouldn't kill him.
Yeah.
Or leaving one irresponsible child to punish another one that's just trying his hardest to learn the Bible. Sorry, that left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's not the religious dad's fault. It's the kid who
Yeah, but what I will
he
say
took
is
it too far.
I think there's a kind of abdication there, because if you're a pastor, presumably you're supposed to be, leading your flock, and so it's necessary to say these things even if everyone believes it. You go into your church every Sunday and say Jesus is God, even though everyone there believes it.
Were they part of a church?
Right.
Oh,
This could be a homeschool, home church.
oh,
I don't know.
Yeah.
This was
I'll
actually.
wager.
I actually got this from Fox, and they really buried the lead in terms of the Bible stuff. It was at the very, very end before you find out.
oh, and by the way, it was all about the Bible. They were Christian.
Right,
And next
right.
up,
Yeah, so you had to read the whole thing before you found out why he was being punished. So they just didn't get into that detail.
I will have to look around. I didn't dig in this too much,
Yeah.
but I'd really like to see, were they part of a church, and has that church said anything other than, oh, this is a terrible tragedy with God calling home another one of his angels? Because if that's what they said, they can, piss off.
Yeah, they've had a couple
yeah,
of days
that's
now.
not how angels.
Yeah, they've had 5 days. I would imagine that if they are part of a church, surely they would have put out a statement by now.
yeah.
Well, I agree they
I didn't-
should have.
Yeah,
Probably would not have.
How long did it take the Catholic Church to start talking about?
It's been more than 20 years.
Yeah.
So, with that said, let's get some good-ish news.
Oh, and here I set up a segue directly to the Catholic Church and the diocese in Austin listing off sexual predators that were priests.
No, next. Then we're not doing that one yet.
Okay.
All right.
Hold that segue thought while we do something
Hold that
positive.
thought while we do something that you will like hearing, secular listeners. All right. Kevin.
All right. And in other news, Kim Davis failed to do her
Boo.
job as a clerk and must pay the bill.
Yes.
Kim Davis.
Yeah.
Rule of law
that's
continues
right.
to exist.
Only took years.
Yeah. Citing, quote, conduct that violates civil rights, lawyers for Governor Matt Bevin say former Rowan County clerk Kim Davis should be held responsible for the nearly $225,000 in legal fees and court costs incurred by couples who sued her in 2015, when she refused to issue marriage license because of her religious opposition to same-sex marriage.
See, and I'm going to disagree that she should pay the legal fees.
I don't think that she could plausibly even come close to that. Although I guarantee
that's irrelevant.
I
Bankrupt her ass if
yeah.
she. But here's the thing: so there's no reason if it was a private suit and the city was not supporting her or anything along those lines, then of course she should pay it all. But and I may be wrong, but I seem to recall that like she had support from both the community and the city going forward on the trial. So I'm not necessarily convinced that, it's like when a principal decides to stand up against church-state separation, it's the Board of Education that controls that principal that makes the ultimate decision about whether or not the school is going to fight it, not just the principal. And I don't know the details enough with Kim's case.
Oh,
yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand a lot of the legality about it either. I can say that she is likely going to be setting up a GoFundMe, and she's probably going to get a lot of money to help her pay it. So
Can I do that for my rent?
I guess
You can actually.
Yeah.
I guess, hey, if a lot of people who agree with her are going to waste their money, have at it.
Yep.
mean,
Can't
I don't
stop
know.
that.
I kind of feel like she should read through the Bible at all the parts where Jesus says, blessed are you if you're persecuted in my name, follow me, bad shit's gonna happen to you, but bad shit is good when you're doing it because of me, and then go, oh yeah, wait, large swaths of this Bible tell me I should be happy that I'm not happy. And then, suck it up, work
Right.
3
Trust
jobs
me.
and pay it herself.
The verses that make it seem as if you're being persecuted for righteousness, any jackass like her is already well aware of them and relishing it. This is one of my biggest complaints about the Sermon on the Mount and other things like that, in that they promote a victimhood mentality. That if the world, if everything is going against you, it's because you're living right for God, and we live in a sinful, fallen world, and the devil is coming after you. And the truth is, it might just be because you're a douche.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, she wasn't familiar with the verses that tell you not to get divorced.
Well, I think she was just able to kind of hand wave those away,
Well,
as they usually do.
yeah, as is
yeah.
the case generally.
Cherry
I really don't know.
Cherry
about
picked the Bible. I'm
legality,
shocked.
but I don't feel bad for her at all. I'm glad that she's being at least somewhat punished.
Yeah.
Because she kind of got off scot-free
Well,
before, and now there's some repercussions for pretty flagrantly breaking the law.
Repercussions or not, I'm glad that the law is recognizing that you can't do this.
Yeah.
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 Which is the smallest possible victory. I'm glad that the law recognizes that if you work for the city and refuse to do your job and still get paid, that you're breaking the law. Yep.
But, this is not going to end.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you go back 12 years when there was a period of time when Dennis and I were doing nonprofits with just the two of us in my tiny little apartment. And I remember stories that were incredibly similar that we discussed about,
Yeah, it never ends.
Does your pharmacist have to fulfill your prescription if it violates their religious?
Oh, yeah.
And the answer is yes,
Yeah.
or they shouldn't have the damn job.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't. Well, I should get to both be a pharmacist and be selective about who I'm going to treat.
No.
That's not the way it works.
You live in society. You serve society. Get over it.
Yeah, go start your own private pharmacy.
Yeah, if you're a Muslim cashier, you can't refuse to check somebody out if they're buying, ham or something.
Yeah, again, I agree. Also, sorry, your statement of go start your own private pharmacy. No, if you're a pharmacy, you sell drugs.
Oh, that's not true. You should be able to start your own private business and be as bigoted and hateful as you want.
I disagree. Because
That's what the law is.
No, you can't put a whites only sign in the front of it. And
You can absolutely put a whites-only sign on a private business. If you don't portray yourself as being open to the public, you can do that.
So I'm unfamiliar with that, but I
What's
don't
a
think that
private
should
business
exist.
as opposed to a public business?
Yeah.
The Boy Scouts are private, which is how they get to discriminate against atheists and things like that.
Okay.
There are private members-only clubs where they only allow men or where they only allow white men. And as long as these things are not viewed as
Not
normally,
open to the public.
a
Okay.
pharmacy in a community is normally something that is open to the public. When I say you can go start your own pharmacy, I mean you can go start your own private club that
happens to purchase and redistribute. Okay.
The problem is,
right.
the reason I don't think you could do that, the reason I think you're correct in that that's not feasible is that there's a lot of licensing that goes into being able to
Pharmacies,
distribute those.
okay.
It'd
And
be
I
under the purview of the state.
I don't think you could technically legally have a private pharmacy, but
Okay,
I'll give you that. I'll give you the
confused by
private clubs can do that.
Yeah, I was confused by the private business as opposed to like privately owned, but publicly
I was gonna
operated.
Because as far as it being a business and something that is designed to be profit generating, I don't think that something like that can exist with that same private designation or should be.
it may not
permitted to.
exist in the realm of a pharmacy, but there's plenty of other things. When they outlawed smoking here in Austin in public spaces, most of the pool halls were messing with the idea of rebranding as private clubs because then
you could
do it.
Smoke.
And
yeah.
there was
Right.
there's a restaurant that had a private cigar bar thing in it. And it was the way of saying, okay, we're if we can't do it and be open to the public, we'll go private. And it then became a matter of, can they get enough revenue, which is why most of the pool halls are closed.
Circling back to the Boy Scouts thing, don't they take federal funding though?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's problematic.
And special deals. Oh, yeah. That's
Yep.
So if you're publicly funded, you can't be a bigoted organization. technically.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that the Boy Scouts should not be getting federal funding, which is what so many people have been fighting for years.
Yeah. Sorry, I just love that. I just love the ending of that sentence. So if you're getting federal funding, then you shouldn't be a bigoted organization, technically. Just the last part of it. You shouldn't be a bigoted organization, technically. America. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, then you wouldn't have that sort of bigoted behavior at all.
Yeah.
But the one thing I like about the allowing organizations to set up as private is that now their bigotry is exposed. Like if you set up a whites-only country club, the fact that you might legally be allowed to do that is completely separate from what kind of reaction you're going to get from people in the community and how long you're going to stay in business.
Right.
And it's the other thing is like, when like Richard Spencer got punched, I'm opposed to punching people for speech just randomly in the street. Did I feel particularly bad? No, I didn't feel all that bad. But the rise of open racism and bigotry in the U.S. is something that has shocked a lot of people and surprised at, the undertow that's there. But I love the fact that people are actually more open about it, because I want to know who these racist assholes are. Because if they get to keep it hidden, now all of a sudden, when you have police brutality, you don't know that it was because, he just hates brown people. But if there's already a public record of doing all kinds of stuff, then now you get to say, clearly, this person should no longer be in this job.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, if there's pictures of you at the Charlottesville, hate march, then it's kind of hard to just hand wave that away.
Yeah.
Right.
It's out in the open.
It is out in the open.
Do we have any
listener mail?
Yes, we
Dennis?
do.
Okay.
All right. Listener mail from Dennis.
And this
Here
is
we
from
go.
Clinton.
From what?
Clinton.
Hillary or Bill?
I don't know.
I thought you said Clinton.
Clinton.
As a location. All right, from
Says,
Clinton.
Hey, non-profits.
Hey.
Part of the conversation on the last podcast reminded me of David Wood, a Christian apologist who claims that religion and fear of hell are the only thing that prevents him from doing harm to others. He has a YouTube channel where he gives the entire story of his conversion from an atheist with no morals to a God-fearing Christian. As a
with
teenager,
no morals.
Yeah, with no morals. Exactly. As a teenager, he nearly murdered his father by hitting him in the head with a hammer. He had no empathy, no compassion, and he attributes this to being an atheist. Then, of course, he found religion, bought into the threat of eternal damnation, and now he follows the moral code found in the Bible.
So he's a psychopath like Dexter, who has a code now from a religion.
Right.
Okay.
He still doesn't care for his fellow man. He doesn't have a sense of right and wrong other than what he gets from the Bible. I think we all give Christians the benefit of the doubt, even when they claim that without their God, they would have no morals. We all know they reject the worst parts of the Bible because they are actually more moral than their God. They are generally good people in spite of their religion, not because of it. But then we have guys like David Wood, a guy who legitimately would see nothing wrong with killing another human being for no reason, if not for the threat of eternal damnation. Of course, this is the basis of his apologist rhetoric. As an atheist, he would be a murderer. Therefore, nobody else could have morals without God. He's absolutely the exception and not the rule, but how many of those exceptions are out there?
So last I saw, because I was starting to do some work on why psychopathy exists in a world with God, which I don't know when I'll get that done, but it's been estimated that a significant chunk of the population is like a psychopath.
He was looking at me funny because I made a drinking noise into my...
No, because every time you raise your microphone, it cuts my sound out.
Oh.
Yeah, you're on. Yeah, okay.
You were saying.
My bad.
Anyway, so the odds are good that you actually know somebody who's a psychopath. And by the way, they're not all dangerous killers.
There's a spectrum, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of criteria, and there's a test that you can give, and if you score like the max you can get is 40 points, but if you're like 30 and over, you're in the realm of being a psychopath. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be any expert on this. It's just something I was looking into because like half the stuff on Netflix is about serial killers. But
I feel like Netflix is trying to profile you, Matt.
that might be. It's also because I shared the account with Beth, and Beth watches a lot of serial killer stuff. But reading through this, I don't know how that's functionally different from Dexter, hey, I've got a code.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if religion is in fact the only thing that's keeping this guy from killing people, then I want him to remain religious.
Keep being religious, dude.
Sure, but you could,
If religion
just
is
find any arbitrary code. He just happened to latch on to, that brand of Christianity.
Yeah, but he should not claim to be being moral because what he's doing is being obedient.
Yeah.
And obedience is not morality.
So it depends on whether or not you define a moral person as needing to understand morality or whether it's just the result of their actions.
Well, my thing is, if he's using the Bible, what happens when he runs across a witch?
What I was going to say is if religion is the only thing keeping him moral, I'd like to know how much he actually uses the Bible for that versus a particular interpretation, and also anything that's better than traditional religions would be good. Can he become a religious humanist with this sort of ridiculous...
Become a secular humanist.
Secular humanist,
That would be better.
Well, he's if you avoid doing bad things out of fear of punishment, you're basically a planaria. You're just responding to conditioning.
What is a planaria?
Well, it's a flatworm that they like to use for experiments. They'll train it to go through a simple maze, and they'll give it an electric shock if it goes the wrong way, or
and it
give it a
remembers the
reward if it
electric
goes
shocks?
the other way.
Okay.
And so you can train it.
You could view it as the tic-tac-toe chicken.
Right.
Is that an actual thing?
Oh my gosh.
All right. Well,
I've got
some YouTube videos to watch.
mindlessly carrying out the carrot and stick scenario, there's no morality involved. You're just trying to avoid pain.
So Jamie's unfamiliar with carny stuff, evidently, and so I've failed as a parent.
But I am too, but I just didn't say it out loud.
Among the various things, there would be a chicken that you could play a game of tic-tac-toe against. Mm-hmm. And what would happen is there's a board inside the chicken coop where he would peck on certain, wherever he wanted his piece to go. Except that the chicken's not doing any thinking. What's happening is there's a light that lights up and the chicken is going to peck that way. Mm-hmm. And that gives him a food reward. Mm-hmm. And then if he doesn't, then they shock the bottom of the cage.
Right.
So they teach a chicken to play tic-tac-toe because tic-tac-toe is a simple enough game that it's been solved, so they can teach a chicken to play it.
Yeah.
No, they're not teaching a chicken to play tic-tac-toe. There's no evidence that the tic-tac-toe, that the chicken understands he's playing a game or doing anything. He's just mechanically responding to reward and punishment.
So my question is, during the game of tic-tac-toe...
Yes.
Are they lighting lights?
Are they actually lighting the lights, or does he remember where to peck based previously?
A light lights up to tell him exactly where to peck.
So there's a 3x3 square. If the chicken carny tic-tac-toe trainer wants him to move in the middle, a light lights up in the middle?
Yes.
Okay. That's less sophisticated than I want my...
That's what I'm saying. The chicken does not know how to play tic-tac-toe.
I don't believe for a moment that you could intellectually teach a chicken this, but if you there's probably also an unintelligent animal that you could train such that if you showed it, because the game tic-tac-toe is so simple, if a person moves here, I want you to move here, and then if this is the situation, you put one here.
Yes. I think there are plenty of animals that could learn to play something simple as tic-tac-toe. I just, wanted to put chickens in the same category as planaria.
Chickens are pretty chicken. Wait, did we get through that?
So anyway, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were just, describing, why Christians are willing to paint themselves as monsters
because they've been told they're monsters.
Because they've been told they're monsters.
Because they've been told that all humans are monsters.
But they're not. No. So,
and
I don't know. So Dennis's question was why Christians are willing to paint themselves as monsters. And I can tell you that at no point during the time that I was a Christian did I view myself as a monster. I had, in many ways, confused obedience for morality.
Yeah. Well, when asked, would you rather be out raping and killing if not for the strictures of your religion, you would answer, have answered.
I would have answered no.
No, good. Because I had one guy say yes.
Yeah.
And that's because he didn't want to surrender any part of his argument. And so he was willing to paint himself as a monster just to win an argument.
But he doesn't view that as a monster. That's the thing. Because you're viewing monster as in there are good people and then there are people who are monstrous. And he's viewing it in as we are all sinners. Yeah. None of us are deserving. And so he doesn't view himself as any more monstrous than anybody else.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Dennis and I never really grew up religious, so I think we might share a little bit of a handicap in relating to that mindset.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little...
It's surreal.
Timey-windy, twisty-bendy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, Dennis, him falling back and like denying everything just so that he doesn't cede any part of his argument sounds more like just humans arguing than specifically religion.
Well, yeah, but he had to go there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it again, I think it's completely arbitrary that he happened to latch on to Christianity. If he lived in a different part of the world, he would have latched on to, Hinduism, and that Hinduism is the reason that he's not a, rapist, torturing murderer.
Right.
I don't see...
It'd be interesting.
I don't really see what the point of...
I don't think I'm familiar with this guy. And so it'd be interesting to see exactly what his style of preaching and evangelizing is and how he portrays himself, because there's the simplistic thing, which even Jordan Peterson did this when we were sitting down up in Toronto, which is giving the impression that without God all things are permissible, and an atheist would just rationalize killing whoever they wanted to kill. So it's not limited to merely fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah.
There's a confused mindset about how
all
morals
sorts
work.
of fuzzy.
So God more of as an abstract as opposed to a particular denomination or religion.
Yeah. It's the concern, the seemingly unending concern that without the code, irrespective of where it comes from, because I think Jordan would say that no matter where you get your code, that's your God. But without that, the world will just descend into chaos. And we have, I don't know how many millions of secular humanists who are proving that wrong on a daily basis.
Yeah, which is weird. It seems like they all have to be presuppositionalists, and think, we all secretly believe in God and follow his rules. Because when faced with atheists not being murderous monsters,
Yeah, no, the apologetic is the only reason that Matt is moral is because he lives in a culture that is surrounded by the morality of Christianity.
Oh, God.
And Matt, there are some who would view me as the rough equivalent of a Dexter following a code.
Good grief.
Because that's the way they think about those things. We're all fallen creatures. We're all sinners. And I've had people like you, when you were talking about that person who said, if it weren't for religion, I did. There are people who've called the atheist experience and said that as well.
Yeah.
I don't believe them, much like
Right,
you.
I don't either. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt
point.
there, but damn.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I want to throw this out really quick, because last episode I did make a mistake. I basically said that same thing. I said that Christians, deep down, they know that they're full of shit. And someone in the comment section on YouTube was like, no, dude, that's the same as them saying that we really believe in God. And I got caught up in the moment, and it's all off the cuff. So
there's a really good talk out there.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to that guy that left that Appreciate it.
I'm still willing to go there. I don't care.
What?
If you dig around, you'll find Beth once did a talk called Yes, We Really Believed That, where she specifically talked to lifelong atheists who are very confused about what it's like to be in that mindset. And so when we start saying things like, they know they're full of shit or whatever, that's not the case. I sincerely did not think for a minute that I was full of shit until I found out I was.
Yeah, I meant to walk that back later on, but we got kind of caught up and off track, and I wasn't able to do it.
But you never really believed there was a talking donkey, did you? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And a talking snake. and all those other things. Now, to what extent I believed them,
And a
I
talking
couldn't say.
toaster. You went to Mars. Wait, Dennis, are you saying that Christians don't really believe deep down?
Well, I've got a stupid emotional argument based on it, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I really don't know.
Consider. You wouldn't walk up to a policeman and commit a crime right in front of them while sneering in their face, would you? But every time a Christian sins, they're sinning right in God's face and sneering while they're doing it.
Nah, but that's not quite true.
So they believe the policeman exists, but they don't believe the God does.
And I completely disagree.
Okay,
Having
that's
been in
fine.
that situation, it wasn't that I thought I could fool God. It was that I already knew I was a sinner. I could not overcome my base desires. The foundational thing within Christianity, especially in modern fundamentalism, is that none of us are or ever could live up to the full extent of the law. That's why Catholics have when they go into and do confessions and stuff. So.
But you can resist your desire to commit a crime right in front of a policeman.
You can't, because it's your nature to do that.
Oh, boy.
So the crimes that I would commit in front of God, because God was everywhere, would be lust. I don't have any control over that. That's just who I am, and it's my job as a Christian to fight and work against that, but I am going to fail, and that is why God is so awesome, because he knows that I'm going to fail, and he will forgive me anyway. It's the forgiveness thing that is the
Well, he
As long as
won't
you-
unless you do all that other stuff.
As
That's
long as
the
you love
real-
him properly.
Yeah.
That's the real problem is if you're convinced that you're saved, and if you buy into this once saved, always saved, then you don't have to go to church, and you don't have to care if you're sinning against God because you're already saved.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can do any atrocity.
So it's
And you
not
can
that I didn't
become a-
believe God existed. It's that I believed that God was going to forgive me in much the same way that it's not that I, if I went up and committed a crime in front of a police officer, it wasn't because I didn't believe the policeman existed. It was because I was convinced the policeman wouldn't arrest me, that he would just forgive me. That's the mindset that takes place.
So if you don't fall under the once saved, always saved mindset, or
You're really missing out. It's the best one.
don't you kind of have to live with the paranoia of, yes, I'm being a good Christian, but what if I'm not being good enough?
Yeah.
You can't be
man.
good enough. That's the point.
Right. That's the whole thing.
That's the thing. It's you're going to fail, and God knows you're going to fail, but God's going to forgive you anyway. The thing is, you need to actually be repentant. You need I mentioned the once saved, always saved. That's not even a full requirement for this mindset. It's just a matter of convenience of, my mansion in heaven is not going to be as nice as somebody else's because my walk with Christ was not as good as somebody else's. It's not ever about, I could actually be so bad that even after I'm saved, God would abandon me and send me to hell. I'm going to heaven no matter how much sinful stuff I do. It's just that I want to strive to do better so that God rewards me better, and that, when I'm standing face to face, I don't have this, my gosh, you lived a terrible life, you were wholly undeserving. And instead, I can be like other people, and it's, yeah, you lived a bad life and you were wholly undeserving, but you weren't as bad as some other people.
So, as I said, I didn't grow up religious, so most of what I get from the religious mindset is like watching Christian movies. And basically
There's your
in
problem.
every single Christian apocalypse movie, there's always a priest or a preacher or whatever that didn't get raptured, and they always say, I preached it every Sunday, but I never truly believed it, or I just wasn't I wasn't a good enough Christian, even though I was a pastor.
Well,
It kind of smacks of that idea that you can never be good enough, and that's why you're broken. And
well, you were born broken because you
Yeah.
were born into a sinful world. The one notion, I guess, to talk about is it depends on what your particular doctrine's soteriology
Right.
is. And the bulk of the world who aren't Christians have this view of Christianity that it has something to do with being good. As if, you do a bunch of good things, you go to heaven, you do a bunch of bad things, you go to hell. That is absolutely the antithesis of what almost every version of Christianity in the modern world teaches. Yes, you can do good things. You can never do enough good things. You can do bad things. But whether or not you are saved, whether or not you spend eternity with God, has nothing to do with whether or not you did good things or bad things or some balance scale, because you could never earn your way to heaven. It's up to God and His grace to grant you that. And when you're in that mindset, or when I was, I'm not going to speak for every believer or former believer, but when you're in that mindset, it's like an excuse. Hey, I'm never going to be good enough, and my preacher's never going to be good enough. And so if I do something, I know that God's going to, probably forgive me anyway, or I know that I'm saved. So this is why you have this cycle of rededication and guilt that a lot of religions do of, well, you're not living up to what Jesus wants from you. You need to do better. And then you fall to your knees and you cry and you pray and you're like, yes, I should do so much better. It's just so difficult because she's hot and I can't help but lust after her, or,
So basically, Emo Phillips had it right.
Yes.
It's a constant guilt trip.
Yeah. Yes. And the thing is, I think if you talk to most Christian pastors, they'd recognize this, and it's because the guilt is deserved, because you were born into sin and you have a fundamentally sinful nature. You are constantly in opposition with God, and it is only God's love and grace that lets you break free from that, nothing that you do yourself.
Yeah. So Google Emo Phillips bicycle.
All right.
Well, before we move on to our next story, we actually have a special announcement on behalf of the ACA. So, next week on Valentine's Day, Shelley Siegel is coming to town, and we have an awesome concert. Tickets on sale now, and commercial being queued up and played at this precise
Valentine's
moment.
Day one to remember. It's time to get sexy. Live in Austin, Texas, an intimate performance by recording artist Shelley Siegel follows a live taping of Secular Sexuality. Food is included and drinks will be available for purchase. Get your tickets now by going to eventbrite.com and search for Secular Sexuality. That's eventbrite.com, search Secular Sexuality.
And it's worth also noting that in addition to the Secular Sexuality episode in the Shelley Siegel concert, is that she will also be, she'll be in San Antonio, I think, Saturday, but Sunday she'll be on the Atheist Experience with me.
Really?
Ooh, yes. So,
And we're bringing guitars.
if you have the ability, onto the show.
Yes.
Oh,
Wow.
That's all I'm saying.
Mic it up.
I was going to say, you're both bringing guitars, and she's going to play them?
Hopefully?
Nope. All right.
Okay.
That was the dirtiest stink eye I've ever gotten from you, Matt. Wow, I
We'll see.
feel bad about that. Tickets are on sale now. Get them. They're not sold out. Get them now. But if you're able to come to town, actually next weekend will be a perfect one because you can just come Thursday through Sunday and catch pretty much everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Moving
I
on.
got my ticket.
Yep. All right. Let's see.
Moving on. And actually,
Oh.
Dennis, that was Clinton.
Clinton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
That was a
you,
good one.
Clinton. All right. I think that I have the next story for. Actually, your story is probably better and more
Please.
important. I'm going to take
You
a
think
little more
so?
time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Kevin.
Hundreds of accused abusers named by Catholic leaders in Texas.
What?
Yep.
Wait, so Catholic leaders they're jumping ahead of the curb?
Yeah, this
here?
was February 1st. Catholic leaders in Texas on Thursday identified 286 priests and other accusers of sexually abusing children.
Wow.
A number that represents one of the largest collections of names to be released since the explosive grand jury report last year in Pennsylvania.
This is Texas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, funny how this isn't being just blasted everywhere.
I'm not getting this.
So weird. 14 dioceses in Texas named those credibly accused of abuse. The only diocese not to provide names was Fort Worth, which did so more than a decade ago and updated their accounting in October. So we have at least one good diocese diocese in Fort Worth.
Yeah, they've been on this
One,
for 10 years.
one transparent diocese in Texas.
Jeez.
There are only a handful of states where every diocese has released names. Most of them have only 1 or 2 Catholic districts. In the months after one of the largest reports, about 50 dioceses and religious provinces have released the names of nearly 1,250 priests.
Covering what time span?
February. Sorry, it just said February 28th.
No. So they released the names of 1,200 priests. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what the time span of those accusations was, because I think that they went like way back and covered like from 1955 up through.
Oh, yeah, I was actually just about.
Right.
Yeah.
Other accused, approximately 60% of them have died, though. About 30 other dioceses are investigating and have promised to release names of credibly accused priests and others in coming months. It's not clear whether any of the names released Thursday could result in local prosecutors bringing criminal charges. The majority of those identified have since died. Some investigations have dated back to 1950, while other reviews, such as the case in Laredo, only went to about the year 2000.
There were a number of problems with this report when it came out. First of all, my impression from reading the various reports on it is they pretty much only released names from 1950 to 2000, so nothing newer than that.
Yeah.
And of the 1,200 names, none of them are actively working in any parish.
Wow.
And so they're either dead or no longer actively working priest. And I don't want to sound like a batshit crazy conspiracy theorist at all. But first of all, fuck them for taking so long.
Yeah.
And second of all, where's the rest of the names? Because I don't believe for a second that if you release 1,200 names and you've got this huge problem that the only names that you can come out with are people who have died or who are no longer priests. Because I guarantee you it's still going on.
Yeah.
It's absurd to think that it's not.
Yes.
And so this shit is incomplete.
Yes.
And this is PR where they know they're not going to have to pay out and they know they're not, none of these people are working in the church anymore. Tell me about the ones that are.
Yeah, this needs to be characterized as a list of priests that have largely gotten away with.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that the church routinely blocks or puts forth legislation to insulate themselves. I think it wasn't that long ago that they helped block a piece of legislation that would extend the statute of limitations for rape victims.
Yeah, for child abuse.
It was before I came on the show. I don't know if you guys covered it.
I remember
I
through
do.
the headlines. Yeah.
I can't remember if that was before or after the Pennsylvania thing.
Yeah.
I think it was. I remember hearing about it afterwards, but I don't know when it actually occurred. Yeah, actually, in response to your question, Matt, it's weird because it didn't occur to me for a moment that anyone would think that list was complete. But that's just me being optimistic. But it. Is that a thing? Is that a narrative that's been thrown? Like, oh well, they've done it. Do you know?
I mean, it has to be. It has to be the narrative somewhere.
Well, okay, but if it's all names from exactly 1955 to the year 2000 done, I'm like, okay, there is no way that it's like, oh, okay, boom, and then since then, no one has ever.
And I can certainly see people going, well, 1,200 names, that must be all of them.
Not even.
It's such a big number.
It is a big list. And what I hear most often is, well, that doesn't happen in my church. Or this is not as big a problem, or the Catholic Church has largely resolved this problem privately. And so here's 1,200 names, and none of them are from the last 18, 19 years.
Right.
And that seems to be, I mean, most people, how many priests do you think there were in Texas over those years?
I literally have no idea.
How many Catholic priests served in from 1950 to the year 2000, that 50-year period? Because I'd say that 1,200 would seem to be I would guess, would be a good sized percentage of priests that served in that time period.
Yeah.
You know, I would be willing to bet that the people who claim that it has been resolved internally, and the people who claim that a further secularized world is becoming more and more perverted that Venn diagram is a fucking circle. So how can you possibly claim that the world is becoming more and more perverted?
Those are the secular priests,
but
Kevin.
sexual abuse is going down within the church.
That's because the church is desecularizing itself by removing all the secular priests. That's who those were.
I mean, yeah, you could explain that away, but...
Well, you don't accept that as an explanation. That's a joking non-explanation.
It would be a
I know what you
shitty...
mean, yeah.
it would
it'd
be
be
shitty.
shitty anyway.
Well, I got a story here that dovetails with that.
Well, actually...
hold on.
Go.
You trying to run away?
I have one quote from an archbishop which really pissed me off. I mean, I went through this whole thing.
All right.
In a statement released with the report of San Antonio Archdiocese, which had the longest list of names among Texas dioceses, with 56 dating to 1940. Archbishop Gustav Garcia Seiler, said the abuse allegations and the mishandling of some bishops are, quote, tearing the church apart. Although the release of the report, quote, brings tensions and pain, the archbishop said he was, quote, filled with serenity and peace by the disclosures.
Wow, that's nice.
He's filled with serenity and peace.
So I guess there's a silver lining.
By this report.
Because they know they won't have to pay out for most of those 1,200.
Right.
I mean, how tone deaf is that?
It's very tone deaf. Okay, allow me to play Catholic's advocate here. Which
Good luck.
or that guy's advocate here, just that guy, which is that when I heard this, I went, oh, that's good. Not because I was then had confirmed to me that, raping had been happening in Texas in Catholic parishes, but because we know it's there, and now we're hearing about it. Now that there are reports of it, we know that this is the very beginning of addressing the problem. So to be as generous and charitable to that guy as possible, I think he's like, oh, well, at least something is being done. So that ends my that guy advocate section, where I now say, yeah, but you're a spokesperson for the church and you should have some idea on how to do PR, and saying that,
Right.
well, I'm full of serenity and peace now, when you're still dealing with this, is tone deaf was generous.
Yeah, I suppose it was.
I mean, to say that it was just tone deaf, I don't know a harsher way of saying tone deaf.
Yeah,
With the singing ability of a 3-year-old.
it is encouraging to see these reports actually coming out, and well, it's encouraging and disturbing, but I really don't see any real work being put forth to stop the systemic abuse.
Not
Yeah.
internally.
They're revealing all these names, I think, because they're not really seeing any real substantive consequences. It kind of seems like we've become somewhat desensitized. I mean, the Pennsylvania thing was shocking, but it became old news relatively quickly.
Yeah. That's what they're counting on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did some quick math.
Okay.
Okay.
In 2010, there were roughly 27,000 churches in Texas. That's the number of churches in Texas. And Catholics make up right around 19% of the population. So if we apply that and expect it to be fairly normative
I don't think it.
for the number of churches, which may or may not be the case, but that would still put us at about 5,000 churches, or Catholic churches, in Texas.
Wow.
Okay.
That was in 2010. So none of their results will evidently apply to 2010.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
how many priests are we employing in any given year? Maybe, let's say, 15,000? Because there'll be like head priests and several other priests, and then other things that, between 1950 and 2000, because there would be more churches now than there were in 1950.
Yeah.
But I can't give you the actual numbers.
Yeah.
But 1,200 names out of 12,000 would be 10%.
yeah.
Or no, 1,200 out of 12,000 be 1%.
Proverbial tip of the iceberg.
No, it's
No,
10.
it was 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it is proverbial tip of the
Captain
iceberg.
Math, kicking my
Yeah, my understanding was that it's somewhere between 6 and 10% of priests, of Catholic priests.
Yeah, if we get back to Clinton's message about how many outliers there are, well, in the Catholic Church, there's at least 1,200 outliers that they've just outed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally.
And I think the percentage of priests that have been shown to be predators is kind of beside the point. The real issue is the fact that there is a systemic problem that is
Going
aided
fast.
and abetted from the top down.
Yeah, for decades.
Yeah.
It's not like there was a documentary and all of a sudden everybody said, "Hey, is this going on around here?" And then they found 1,200 names. These are 1,200 names that have been fucking hidden
Yeah.
for years. They had these 1950 allegations. They didn't just go find these 1950 allegations the other day.
Yeah.
They've known.
They had records. They're
Yeah, these
The
priests
Catholic Church is a criminal organization,
Yep.
period.
and if you tithe, then
you're
You're supporting
paying
it.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if no priest at your particular parish fits into this. You're
Yeah.
still contributing to the church that's bailing them out, moving them around, and hid all this stuff for years. If you're a Catholic, you should be absolutely embarrassed, and you should be cleaning up your own backyard, not waiting for somebody on the nonprofits or a news station to sort this stuff out. You want to try to claim that there's some moral high ground or that atheists are repugnant or whatever else. And I'm not saying that bad stuff doesn't happen within the atheist community or any other community, but it's that community's responsibility to call it out. And these priests don't get credit for doing a PR statement about 50 years of sexual abuse where
Only
we have
including
nobody.
the dead ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a list of dead priests. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Don't presume to lecture us on morality.
It's a good start.
Sorry.
Don't presume to lecture us on
Yeah.
morality until you've completely cleaned up your own.
they're either dead or they're past the statute of limitations, which the church actively made sure didn't get extended.
Here's the names
Federal
we're willing to
laws.
tell you about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Sure seems like maybe we got them all.
Right?
It's a big number,
It's
right?
not possible for there to be more than this many, right? Like,
And after all, look, we don't have any new credible accusations in the last 19 years. Look how good we're doing.
that we're telling you about.
Yeah.
Awful. Actually, for a global organization like that to have never mind. But it's the response that bothers me the most, right? Like, I understand the person that just wants to go to their church on Sunday and that sure throws in a fight. Like, I understand why they're making that decision. I don't agree with it. But for them to shy away from this or, tell me, well, I'm upset too with the Catholics right now for the molestation. That's me quoting a friend of mine. I'm sort of just like, wow, like I know that you don't go looking for like, ooh, what has the church done because you don't want to hear about it, but it hasn't stopped. Nothing's been done to fix it. It's much worse than molestations. It's been going on for more than half a century. Fuck you.
Yeah.
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 Your church is a problem.
Yeah.
This is completely independent of whether or not you're correct about a God or how we should pray or what we should do or all the particular rites and rituals. Your church, the actual organization, is a criminal organization that is the problem, and you're supporting it just because you want to go sing a song and have a potluck and play bingo.
You're an enabler, whether you want to be or not.
Yep.
Yeah, it's controlled and orchestrated from the top down, funded from the bottom up, and all the while priests rape children, and we're arguing about semantics.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
Next.
Yeah. We're really, really low on time.
yeah, we're really low on time.
Yeah, like,
Do
do you
we
guys
wanna-
stop on time?
We stopped pretty close. But I was
There's
gonna
like a
say,
minute.
let's get this.
I do have a couple
Let's get
of
this.
Okay, go
quotes
for
that
it.
we
Let's
can
get
do
just this
for
one,
a
yeah.
shit.
Yes.
You want to do it?
I think it is now time for us to cover
Shit Internet apologists say!
Yeah?
Okay.
What do
Kevin.
you got for us?
What do you got?
Trump's prayer warriors slam Muslim members of Congress.
Oh,
Sharia supremacist spiritual warfare.
what?
Ow.
Yeah.
Who's worrying against who?
So this is the
whom?
Intercessors for America.
It's who? Sorry.
Intercessors for America.
Okay.
IFA. Jeez.
And what do they do?
The IFA had a prayer. Let's see. They had a
Prayer pancake
monthly prayer
breakfast.
call where they actually invited anti-Muslim activists Frank Gaffney and Philip Haney.
Probably.
And
Two dudes
yeah,
Dudes.
who don't like
so
Muslims.
during this prayer
Call.
prayer off, whatever.
Prayer down.
Because we don't pray enough.
Prayer-a-palooza!
Gaffney spoke. And also David Kubal of the IFA at Intercessors for America. Kubal attacked Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat of Minnesota, and
Ilhan Omar.
Hannah Amar. And Gaffney declared that the problem the U.S. is facing in confronting, quote, Sharia supremacy is a form of spiritual
we can't find it to fight
warfare.
it.
Spiritual warfare. In response to a question about Tlaib and Omar, speaking about a congressional reception hosted by the Center for American Islamic Relations, CAR, which Kubal called a, quote, terrorist-linked organization.
The Center for American Islamic Relations.
Yeah.
It's because they have Islamic in their name.
Yeah. So they are just by default a terrorist-linked organization.
Well,
What is this?
it's obviously linked. So you have Islam in that name, and Islam has produced terrorists, and so therefore there's a link.
I was going to say, did he just write terrorism and the Center for American Islamic Terror on a chalkboard and draw a line between them?
Well, you know, what's funny
It's
is
linked. These two things are linked. See this
the
line right
overwhelming
here?
majority of domestic terrorism is by right-wing Christians.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
is the IFA a terrorist-linked organization?
I mean,
would-
not by my definition.
I don't know. I think the speaker over here who's trashing everybody's probably linked to terrorism.
I'm
too.
pretty sure, you know, by that, their reasoning. Anyways,
Yeah.
what makes Congresswoman Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and for that matter, so dangerous is that they are not simply talking about an outfit that I think is properly described as Hamas doing business as CAR, but that they fully share the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology and ambitions to achieve the triumph of Sharia in our country.
Right. So, no. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the particular position of the Center for American Islamic Relations. I would be surprised to learn that they were officially affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood or said or could be demonstrated to be promoting Islamism in America, but
Did this guy call for any action or anything?
they call for prayer.
Let's
so
see.
Prayer. Because if you want to define all this as spiritual warfare, then by all means, I am a fan and someone who would encourage you to engage in spiritual warfare. You guys pray at your respective gods at each other all you want, as long as you're not actually engaging in actual warfare.
Prayer
Yeah.
off.
I was going to say, I think that's the best thing for religious fanatics to resort to.
Dear
prayer.
God, please take care of all those religious people that I don't like. And they'll be
then-
praying the same thing.
Leave it.
Yep, done. I'm engaging in spiritual warfare with all religious people right now.
Do you want some more hyperbole?
Yes.
With
Quote.
chocolate.
It is a moment for prayer and for action against this kind of Sharia supremacist spiritual warfare on the most urgent of scales.
We need more thoughts and prayers.
The persecution for following Jesus Christ is taking place on a scale that dwarfs the predations of Pol Pot and Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong combined.
Wow, that's like bingo.
Yeah, no, really.
Put them all in there.
Holy shit.
Take a drink. Take 5 drinks. Yeah.
The thing is, it calls for prayer and action. So now he's already violated what I was okay with. Pray all you want.
Well, unless you call prayer action.
I don't. But I was going to say, it's sort of the limits of the protection of freedom of speech or when you incite violence or violent action. But if someone wants to go home and pray that someone dies, I don't think that counts because prayer doesn't do anything.
As a matter of fact, if you're a theist listener to this program, as I'm here as a special, infrequent guest, I would like for you to all pray that your God kill me as quickly as possible.
Oh, but then you might be,
Tick-tock.
Yeah, I know what time it is. Now you've told the listener.
All right, you know what? There's more crazy, but I think that really is the peak of crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's the peak of crazy.
It's all dwarfed. What's happening to Christian people now is worse than
Buzzword evil.
Yeah, Pol Pot, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mao Zedong combined.
Jesus, I was just going to say that they're now throwing supremacist in there, which sort of tells me like I don't think that's an adjective they would have combined before these things. I feel like they're actively
before we took their hoods off.
Yeah, before we took their hoods off. Before it was in the news, before white supremacy was something we were talking about, because it's always, oh yeah, well I'm going to call you words that you called me to. Every time. All left.
Yep.
And on that note, I think, Dennis, can you take us out?
Yeah.
I can do that. And finally, in closing, I would like to state for the record that it has been our great honor to serve as your voice in these troubled times, and that we shall raise our voices again in bipartisan fellowship on the 20th of February, 2019. Until then, may our hard-won reason and compassion overcome the many tribulations that torment us and deliver us into a glorious new era of peace and prosperity for all.